Welcome to Abiding Life Studios. Be sure to check out our unique self-test, available in our app on iOS and Android, and on our website at abidinglife.com. Take the test today and find out how God uniquely made you. Share your results with anyone, along with the capability of purchasing and gifting tests. And remember to check out our YouTube channel at Abiding Life Ministries International to watch Michael Wells training videos, including basic seminar, expanded seminar, counselor lecture training, podcasts, and more.
Hello, welcome to Abiding Life Studios. I'm Noah Wells. Today I have with me Shay Wells.
Hi.
Hi.
I never know what else to say. Hello.
Either do I. So we are going to be talking about today in this little marriage
It's almost
podcast.
like a marriage
I don't know what you want to
series
call
at
it.
this point.
I don't know what it's going to be called, but this is what we're doing. What are we talking about?
Supporting your spouse.
Supporting your spouse.
Mm-hmm. I do have a question though before we start.
Okay.
How do you feel about the kids being back at school after Christmas break?
We're both feelers, so when there's no school, we stay up very late.
Yeah, we're on a little bit of a struggle bus trying to get our schedule back together, but
it's going.
It's going.
Yes.
Do you miss them?
I don't know if I want to answer that question.
I think a lot of parents can relate to it though. Like Christmas break is so great and having them home. Then they just went back to school yesterday and it's like, oh.
Let's just say I'm glad we don't homeschool.
Yes. For those of you who do homeschool.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Our hat goes off to you.
Yeah. It's amazing. But the supporting your spouse topic came up because I know in the last podcast we were talking about communication and things. And then we were talking about just kind of doing our own, not like market research, but just kind of thinking about the married couples that come to us and what their struggle is. So if you listen to the last podcast, we really talked about communication. And then one of the other things we've been noticing is a lack of support for your spouse.
Yes, I agree.
Do you think that support comes natural for people?
No.
I don't think so either.
I don't think so either. I mean, like I've talked about before, I think it's way easier for me to be angry or dislike something than love something.
Yeah.
I think it's very natural for me to dislike something more than love it.
Yeah, I think there are people who, like, God has given them like this inherent gift of support and encouragement in things. But I think that for most people, it's hard to support, but I also think it's harder to support your spouse sometimes than like a friend.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because your spouse, you're living with them. And so if you like all of a sudden change in some way, if my friend changes or my kids change, I just get to like support them and love them in that. And same with friends, right? They change, but their change doesn't affect you.
Yeah.
When your spouse starts to change or find new hobbies or whatever, then you try to support them and it's like, but this really affects me.
Yeah, I think even if it's a good thing, I remember when you a long time ago started wanting to work out.
Yeah.
That was a change for me. So then I was like, well, where do I fit in that?
Yeah.
And I actually started feeling really uncomfortable, or what's that word? I can't come up with words for nothing.
Did it make you insecure?
Insecure, that's the word I was coming up with. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, it made me feel really insecure. And I was like, well, what do I need to do that? Or does she want me to be involved?
Yeah.
Does she want to do it herself? Yet again, it comes down to communication, right? It's like, well, do I have this conversation with her or do I pout about it?
Yeah.
I'm sure I pouted about it first and acted like, woe was me, even though it was a good thing. It's good for you to work out. But, it is unique when your spouse comes up with a different idea, like, hey, I'm going to start mountain biking.
Yeah.
You're like, well, are you going to do that by yourself or are you going to do that with me?
Yeah. And I think, and I know we have this on the list to talk about today, but I think that for a lot of people, when a change occurs, it instantly brings up insecurities. And then that is where I feel the lack of support comes from, is from an insecurity. Because I think a lot of people go to, are they doing this to become a different person for somebody else, for something else? And I know and I know we were going to talk about this today, but there was a time that you took a trip and you went to LA to see your brother.
Oh yeah.
And it was great. And you and your brother went shopping because your brother was like, you can't keep wearing these 90s jeans with chain wallet and huge t-shirts. And you got off that plane in great, like you looked fantastic,
Yeah.
but that was the problem. Because all of a sudden you walk off in these nice jeans and shoes and jacket. And I remember looking at you going, no, I can't do this. And it wasn't, I wasn't mad that you went and bought clothes, but it was hard to support this new version of you because I was instantly insecure. Like, great, why is he dressing nicer? Is it for somebody else? Does he even love me? You know, all of the things that start going through your head. And it's hard because we change so often, and it could be hobbies, it could be physical appearances, it could be opinions of things. Like, we change. How often do you feel like we change as humans?
Yeah, as humans, I think, like big changes. I think you and I, even in our marriage, are different than we were 6 months ago.
Yeah.
I think, at least in my mind, it's every 6 months. It's probably sooner. It's probably something like a month or a week could even be. But if you look back, I think the big parts are 6 months.
Yeah. And I also think too, you know, when we first met, I was already a mom.
Yeah.
And you took on the dad role, but you didn't have that experience of like pregnancy and birth and infancy. And so then when we had our second daughter together, you became a dad in every sense of the word. And that changed you.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know, getting married changed both of us.
Oh yeah.
We were
absolutely.
so awkward when we first got married. And I think,
like, is this okay if I touch you here?
Yeah.
You know, it's so weird. Yeah, it's really weird for us.
And I just feel like big life experiences change people too, where like as new parents, we really struggled to connect and to support each other as new parents.
Yeah.
Because you're also supporting this little child. And then, you know, we all went through this crazy pandemic, and that changed a lot of us. And there were so many people that were like, I'm not going back to the life that we, you know, had. I want to try these new hobbies. I want to get a new job. You know, we started kind of, for me, what I saw was people diving into like social media and things. So they started seeing new ways of living and new ways to dress and new hobbies. And we had 2 years to really like kind of dive into that.
Yeah.
So much change happened. And I think sometimes if you have one person going through change or moving through something, the other spouse can kind of feel left behind.
And yet again, it goes back down to communication of if your spouse, your mate decides to do something new, I think it's worth a conversation.
Yeah.
Like, hey, are you just wanting a hobby to kind of do it by yourself, or can I be involved in this?
Yeah. And I do think it's important in a spouse situation to try to do the hobbies together.
Yeah.
Because I think the last thing that anyone wants in their marriage, and I think the last thing that God wants in your marriage, is any sort of separation. And I think if one has a hobby and the other one's just staying at home all the time, and you can't find that common ground, you can't find that support within it, it just causes more and more and more separation. And the only thing that the enemy wants for all of our marriages is for them to fail. And so we can start really seeing that infiltration of the enemy when we start causing that separation more and more. Now, one of your hobbies was always like four-wheeling.
Yeah.
And I sure as heck am not going to go four-wheeling ever.
You won't get on a four-wheeler? Come on.
I've seen you on that thing. It is not.
You won't get on the back with me?
No. I like my feet planted on the ground. But I will make sandwiches for you, or help you load the truck, or you know, that is my way of supporting you.
Yeah.
And you're really good about, you know, texting me while you're out and doing the things and checking in, which I think is so important if you're going to have hobbies or things that you do separately, to kind of having that communication and having a plan of, I don't want to do your hobby.
Yeah.
Like, that is not for me.
Yeah.
But I do want to be involved in ways that I can be involved. So can I stand and talk to you while you load the truck? Or can I get you food for the boys? Or, just finding ways to be involved without having to do it.
Yeah. So you're saying it's okay to have separate hobbies.
Yes.
But still have communication in those separate hobbies.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think that it is wise to have separate hobbies and have them be fully separate, which means you're not communicating about it. You're not involving your spouse in some way. Yeah. Even if it's just supporting them going. The last thing that you need is a silent treatment from me because you're going out riding with the boys. I can still like cheer you on from the sidelines at home, know that you're doing that, and you can communicate, hey, I'm here, I'm safe, I'm having lunch, whatever. I'm still involved. Now, if you were like, I'm going to be gone this weekend, and you up and leave and I don't know where you are or what you're doing or who you're, that then causes separation because the insecurities come in. Yeah.
Like if it's not a conversation, I just say, hey, I'm going.
Right.
Hopefully you can take care of the kids. I'm out.
Yeah. It's like, oh, great.
Yeah.
Anything that you can do to close the gap of separation within your marriage will help tremendously, which comes back to communication, which we did the podcast on earlier. So go back and listen to that if you haven't, because we also talk about the difference between responding and reacting. Hey, I'm going to be gone this weekend riding. See ya. Yeah. I could sit there and go, what are you getting me? Or I can go, hey, can we have a conversation about this first?
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Just taking those few minutes to pause and respond.
Well, and can I say something real quick too is, for, I think it was a couple of years, I was doing the four-wheeling stuff and now I don't, so I think things do come and go, little hobbies here and there, and then they go away and then that's okay. Right. Yeah. We still are communicating with that. And, basically all I wanted to say is hobbies come and go. Yeah. Your marriage is very important. Yeah. And I think when we first met too, if you don't mind me saying this, is I know when we first met, I had a relationship with Jesus and you came from church. Like when I met you, you were going to church every Sunday. And but then when we talked, you didn't understand how to have a relationship with Jesus. Like to you, it made no sense. And it probably made you feel insecure. Yeah. And so you're like, well, what does that even mean? I don't understand what that stuff even means. So I think it's been cool for me to watch you grow in that, watching you trust Jesus more and watching you trust and follow him more. And I don't know, if I would have just told you, no, this is the way it has to be. Yeah. If you're going to marry me, you need to have a relationship with Jesus. Yeah. That's it.
And bottom line. It has to look this way.
Yeah, and it has to look the same way mine did. Yeah. I think you still would not have a relationship with Jesus right now.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, I know we've mentioned this a few times, is trusting God in someone else's journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And who's told us that?
Tim Lester told us that.
I have to make sure to give Tim some credit because it's been pretty pivotal, really, to just sit and think about, you really trusted God in my journey. You weren't trying to be my God in the journey. You weren't trying to push me to be anything. You trusted that God had me. And it goes really with any sort of new chapter in your marriage and new chapter in your life is what can you do to shorten that separation while also trusting that God has your spouse on a different journey than you are on. Yes. And you can be on that journey together. You should be on the journey together, but trusting, like there have been so many times where you are really struggling or I am really struggling. I mean, that year before you went into ministry, I was a mess. Yes. And I didn't know why, but it was a panic attack 24/7 for 365 days. I could not get out of this panic state. And I had no idea what was happening. But you didn't stop for me, but you also didn't try to drag me. You were very just like patient with me, knowing that God was doing something and just loving me through that. And I think that was one of the biggest things that we've learned in supporting each other, whether it's a hobby or a new chapter or a change in clothes or the time I got bangs or, all of the,
Talk about that.
all of the different changes that we go through in a marriage comes down to having that communication first and foremost. Always, always, always communicate. And then loving that person while trusting that God has them.
Yeah, because we're all on our own journey, right? I'm going to learn differently from God than you are.
Yeah.
And so it's going to look different.
Yeah.
So I've seen you struggle before, and I just sit back and go, all right, God, you got this. And I know she's done the same for me, where we struggle different ways.
And our kids.
And our kids, then you add that on to it. And I think when I was called into ministry, and I'm just going to throw this out there, is when I was called to ministry, I think Shay was looking at ministry. She was comparing ministry with my dad to me. She thought, he's getting into ministry. He's going to be gone all the time.
Yeah.
And for her, me being gone is rejection because of what's gone on in her life, in her past, because we all have a past. And that's what brought up that part. And it was really cool because God knew that. And with me saying, hey, I think God's pushing me towards ministry, she just boom, shut right down. And God knew that.
Yeah, I instantly felt abandoned.
Yeah, you felt abandoned.
Even though you were right there in front of me.
Yes.
I felt abandoned.
Yeah. And it was kind of cool that whole year watching you grow. And yes, I know it was a big struggle.
Yeah.
But watching you grow through it and knowing God was in that whole time.
Yeah.
And knowing the other cool part about God is like, he calls me into ministry, but he knows I wasn't going to go right in.
Yeah.
Because he knew this had to work first.
Yeah.
He needed to work on your heart and your brain and your everything.
Yeah.
Before I went in.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know, at least that's how I look at it. I thought it was really cool how he works things.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we'll eventually do a whole podcast on this, but I do want it to be known that you actually said no to God for a year.
Yes.
While I struggled. I think so many times we feel like, oh, God's calling us to do this. I have to do this. But God knew that you were going to say no for that year. He knew that you were going to, because I was struggling, that in that year we grew so much closer because we had to have a lot of conversations about my abandonment issues and my fear of rejection and what ministry would look like for you and for our family, and really be able to, again, communicate through it. That's what it took. Is I really just think that every issue comes down to communication. Yeah. And if you're going to support your spouse, to have that communication. And lastly, I will say too, on top of the communication and things, is the importance of loving yourself and knowing who you are in Christ. Knowing that God has our marriage, and he has me and he has you, and having that security in knowing that he put us together and that we are going to go through things together, and really leaning into that instead of focusing on the superficial what ifs that can happen in a marriage.
Yeah. Oh, you can definitely go down the what ifs.
Oh yeah. Especially, I mean, marriages, every time we tell someone we've been together 14 years, we've been married for 12 and a half, people go, oh my gosh, congratulations. That's incredible. It's like, I don't want to be, it's marriages just don't last, because there's that lack of communication and lack of support and lack of security and trusting that God has you and that he created you for this marriage, for this time.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And I think another part of it is, can you actually see God in everything?
Yeah.
Even when it doesn't look like that year you were struggling so much, or the 15 years I've struggled, or 20 years I've struggled,
it was hard to see God.
Yeah, it is hard to see God. And you're like, God is really in this? Yeah, he is, because he's always working something.
Well, and to go back to that year, I was literally in and out of the hospital weekly with panic attacks, thinking something was wrong. You very easily could have said, this is a sign that God doesn't want me going into ministry. This is a sign that our marriage is going to fail. My wife has gone crazy. Instead of going, okay, I'm going to trust that God is in this and we're going to keep moving forward.
Yeah.
We're going to communicate and support each other and start moving forward.
Yeah. And yet again, I don't want to be your God, and I didn't even want to be your fixer. I mean, of course you want to be the fixer, right?
Yeah.
I want to be the person that helps you and fixes you. But I think when I got to that point of, hey, you need to go talk to someone who's not me.
Yeah.
And I think you found the perfect person for that.
Yeah.
And the best part about that is when you can see someone who doesn't want to see you for 5 years.
Yeah.
They're actually, the whole plan of seeing that person, therapist, counselor, whatever you want to call them, discipler, whatever.
Yeah.
That whole goal should be on that person is get you out of there as quick as possible.
Yeah.
And I think it only took you a couple months and you were good, but it's
for a couple of years and I went back.
Yeah. And that's the thing, which is fine. It's like what my mom always says. It's like an adjustment. It's a chiropractor adjustment. And we sometimes just need that. And sometimes that helps just go talk to somebody.
I have one last question before we wrap it up.
Okay.
How would you define the difference between supporting your spouse and fixing what's right in front of you? Do you feel like there's a way to differentiate between, like, how do I support my spouse? How do I support you without wanting to fix and because I feel like, especially in the world that we live in today, we all want instant gratification. We all want everything to be fixed. We all want everything to look pretty and put our best foot forward, especially with social media. It's all like a highlight reel. And if your spouse is struggling, I want to fix you because I don't want anyone to know that we have struggles or that you are struggling, because we have to be this picture perfect family. How do you support and love your spouse without jumping into like this? We have to fix this. This has to look a certain way.
Well, yeah, and I think I'll add this too. I think when you're hurting, I'm hurting, and when I'm hurting, you're hurting. So, and I think anyone out there can admit it is so much easier to take on the junk of what's going on yourself than watch someone go through it.
Yeah.
I would, if I could take all of Shay's stuff and put it on me, I'd much rather do that.
And vice versa.
And vice versa. Yeah. So I think that's the normal thing. But first and foremost of supporting someone, I think one, of course, is always going to Jesus first and asking him, how can I help her or him? And really, sometimes that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Like, I know for years in our marriage, I was struggling with multiple things. If you really want to hear them all, listen to my testimony. But, struggled with a lot of things. And I know for Shay, a lot of the time the only thing she could do was muster up a small prayer of, Jesus, just be with him.
Yeah.
Jesus, give me love for him.
Yeah, because there were times that the human part of me didn't feel very much love for you. And it wasn't, I've always loved you, but especially as newlyweds, I felt like we were supposed to feel a certain way and be a certain way. And I remember praying of like, God, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I have nothing. And God was like, just keep loving him. And that was, some days it would be, you would walk in the door and I go, hi, how was your day? And that was as much as I could do to support and love you. Or you'd walk out the door and I would just say, praying for you.
Yeah.
Because that's literally all I had. So I think that's such a good point, is first and foremost, go to the one who made you guys one.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the other part, what is it? Support. And what was the other word you said? Support and
fix.
And fix. I think yet again, like we talked about in the other podcast, was asking those questions. Hey, do you want help on this?
Yeah.
Do you want me to fix this? Or do you want me to just hold you?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to just listen? Or do you want me to just come up with other ideas so you don't have to think about this right now?
Yeah.
Like, I think yet again, it's just another conversation of just
asking, how can I support you?
Which is, I understand, trust me, I understand it's terrifying.
Hard,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is very terrifying sometimes to do that, but
answer. I mean, when I was going through, there's even days the other night you were like, how can I help you?
yeah,
And I was like, I don't know.
yeah.
And neither of us had that answer. So instead,
I think I just held you that time.
you just held me. And it
I
was
said, well,
like,
can I hold you? Are you okay to be touched right now?
It's like, I guess.
Let's try it.
Yeah, but sometimes you don't have the answer, but to be willing to ask the question. And again, to go back to our last podcast about communication, is all of those little questions of like, how can I support you? Do you want to talk about it, or do you want a solution? Every time you ask those, you start chipping away at those walls and creating a safe space. So being willing to even just ask those. And sometimes you're not going to get an answer, or you're going to get an answer that you don't know how to support them in that way. Yeah. And just because I don't like taking any credit for anything, but Steve Reinhardt is the one that originally told us about the asking your mate, do you want me to fix this, or do you want me to just listen? Yeah. And I'm telling you right now, that helped us just a crazy amount, because I'm always assuming if she's coming to me, she wants a fix. And him trying to fix it can actually infuriate me. Yeah, exactly. Because I don't want to be fixed. I just want to vent. Well, and sometimes I'm not even listening to her then, because in my mind, I'm just wrapping my mind around how I can fix it. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I'm missing a lot of the meat of what she's actually trying to say to me. Yeah. Of the hurts and past and everything else. So I think, I don't know, when Steve Reinhardt told us about that, I was like, it was one of those light bulb moments. It's like, wait a minute, that's so simple. In every relationship, like we said in that last podcast, even like with your kids and friends, of, do you want a solution or just a vent? Like, is this just a talking thing, or do you need help? Yeah. So, all right. Well, I will say, we're praying for all you guys, in your marriages, in your relationships. It can be very hard. We're hoping that these bring some value and some things to think about for you guys, and know that you're not alone in these struggles. And, we talk about these because we've been through it and we continue to go through it. And so we just want to bring you honesty and a dose of realness, because we've walked through all of this. Yeah. And just know that God is in it. Even though it looks like a mess sometimes, God is in it. He's working on all of us. Yeah. And really, he just wants us closer to him. He wants us to count on him. And he wants your full marriage. Yeah, and I'd rather you go to God than to me. Yeah. I understand we need people. Which is hard. Yeah, it is hard. Because you're very hard. Here. Yeah. But to put God in the middle of your marriage, you have to be willing to also give your spouse to God, and give your marriage to God, and keep going to him, even when it's ugly, even when it's messy. And seeing what he can do with it. Yeah, trusting Jesus in someone else's journey. And trusting him in your marriage. Yeah, and trusting him in your marriage. Yeah, in the full marriage. It goes with everything. This pertains to every relationship, right? And just trusting that God has you where he wants you, even if it's really ugly, even if things are really hard right now, even if, Yeah. We could go on and on. We could. We will go on and on. On to the next. Yes. All right. Thank you for listening. I hope everyone has a good week. Yep. And we love you guys. Yeah. And like I said, if you want to like this, great. I don't know, it helps something on YouTube. And then if you subscribe to the podcast, you'll know when we release them. Yeah, and we're always releasing something. Yep. And so check out the Facebook page as well, website. Yeah. All of the places to stay up to date. Yeah. abidinglife.com. And then also, if you guys want us to talk about any sort of subject. As always. Yes. Noah@abidinglife.com. Yep. So. Or Shay at abidinglife.com. SHAY. Or Shay. SHAY. Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Thanks for listening in. If you enjoyed the message today, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any new releases. For more information about Abiding Life Ministries, visit abidinglife.com.